Well, hello, YouTubers. Well, there is new interesting scandal out there. It seems that Mamie Van Doren, has fielded some statements that Jack Webb had back in, I think it would have been 1954 or 55, on a date where he took her to his house for dinner, had drugged her and tied her up and raped her. And she did nothing about this because she figured since the police were fond of him, they wouldn't do anything. She was also worried that the morals clause in the studio contract would give her trouble. Actually, it would have given him trouble, not her. But she wasn't the one doing anything. And some other excuse. And she took a long time to get around to saying anything about this, very long time. And supposedly she pushed all this to her side, this trauma that she suffered side effects of for a couple of days, and then shoved this aside to her mind until she was at a LAPD event honoring him or something like that, or included honoring him, of a sort that was on, I think, routinely for something like 25 or more years now, which what she was doing there is anybody's guess. She thought it was some kind of a charity thing, which I think it is also for the fallen officers' wives or something, I don't know. But anyway, he's like, she sees this photograph of him, this big picture on the wall, and that triggers everything coming foremost, so she starts talking about this. Well, there's several problems here. Basically, no, this did not happen. I'll tell you why. There's at least two versions of the story out there, and one of which she scrubbed from the internet, and then, but I managed to locate a copy. And the other of which was in Google being commented by somebody because of an interview, and it was commented on, and I commented on that. And what Google groups. Anyway, in the longer story, which includes her various excuses for not talking about it for a while, years and years and years, she had said that she was fading in. Both versions have her fading in and out of consciousness part of the time. And she wakes up somewhat and finds him fussing around, as she puts it, the knots tying her to a chair. Now, what is a guy going to do tying a woman to a chair who's going to be on a bed? This makes no sense. I mean, he's like, he's not some idiot who doesn't know anything about human physical mechanics. You can't get much done with a woman who's sitting up in a chair, except, and she's in no shape to give him head, and it's just, it's ridiculous. But if you're going to lie, you often construct a story involving elements that you're familiar with already. And the trope of a damsel in distress tied in a chair while some evil bastard in black suit, top hat, and twirling his handlebar mustache is telling her he's going to kill her if she doesn't either marry him or hand him the deed to her property or property water rights or whatever he's after. It's something that Van Doren would have grown up with in cartoons, and I, who am younger, of course, saw in cartoons, and was probably present in some of the older movies, including the silent ones that she would have been acquainted with as a child. So it's in her mind, and she's going to construct a story. She's going to jump on a trope that's already in her mind. And then she says that she wakes up again. She's on a tied to a four-poster, spread eagle getting raped. Well, I think in both versions of the story, she has him having a wild look in his eyes. Now, the second version, which was commented on in Google, had, it's originally from some interview, she claimed this was done on one of his kids' beds. Now, enough time at this point had elapsed that she apparently maybe some booze, and she forgot that at the time this allegedly happened, the oldest of his children would have been 4 or 5 maybe years old, at most 5, 4.5, somewhere in there. So then we're talking about child's bed, four-poster or not. If she was tied to a child's bed, she's going to be tied elbows and knees, not wrists and ankles. You got her limbs hanging over the edge of the bed. And theoretically, in this position, he could be boinking her from the end of the bed. But she said, with phasing in and out of consciousness vaguely, all foggy and everything, she could see this wild look in his eyes, which means his face must have been close to her. So that means he was on top of her, not at the end of the bed. So what we got here is a big problem. A child's bed for a 4 or 5-year-old. Being able to support the weight of 2 adults, one of whom's doing vigorous motion. I think that bed would collapse or crack at least. Something would go wrong. On top of that, if she's phasing in and out of consciousness, then she's going to be more conscious by the time he's trying to pile her in the car and dump her off at her mother's place as too dry, supposedly so drunk or drugged up, whatever, that she had nothing to say at the moment. And I'm just saying she gotten terribly drunk and all. And that means by the time we get out to the part of the driveway, we're probably talking about a certain amount of yelling and screaming going on in a classy neighborhood. So why don't the neighbors, some neighbors would have called the police, some press people would have been following police scanners to locate stories to report on. Something would have been out there. And the only thing I recall, I could find anything about him involving the police getting on his case about anything was some cop who ticketed him for drunk and disorderly, and no reference to it. But there's another problem. He and his wife, Julie London, had just separated or just been divorced. And when she was offered this date, supposedly, by the studio, and she said he's married to Julie London, so they've just separated. Now, whether they're talking about legal separation or full-on divorce is not clear, but in either case, we're talking about a very small bed, okay? And she probably threw it in there for the nastiness angle. He did it on one of his kids' beds. And somebody else who got kicked off her Facebook page, I think it's the same one that was kicked off her Facebook page, so he said, for exposing her lies, said that this was really a disgraceful accusation and that she was basically a nasty person and that she had lied about a lot of men, that he knew several men that she claimed she had been in the sack with who denied it, and one of whom said that going to bed with her would be like snuggling up on an abandoned mattress behind a dumpster in an alley somewhere. In other words, some of these guys wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. Now, when she was talking about her association with Frank Sinatra, he was interested in her, but she said she didn't find him sexually attractive, but if she had, quote, he wouldn't have gotten away, unquote. Now, I bought a copy of her book, and what is that? That first one. I'm not sure if My Naughty Naughty Life is just a retitling of the same thing or not, but it's too expensive. It doesn't mention the Jack Webb thing, and it's Playing the Field, that's the title. And in it, I notice a pattern also in the other interviews that I've seen so far. She will approach a man and get him, or she'll be approached by a man and either accept him or refuse him. But you never hear about her approaching somebody and being refused. That just is not an option. So it's like somebody suggested that she had come on to Jack Webb, who'd refused her, and so she did this out of revenge, but she took a long time doing that. He had been seen around with her. Apparently he dated her once or twice, and apparently decided this is not the right girl for him. He always seemed to be looking for someone to have a romance with, not just some cheap fling. And she said the first date ended with just, a little kiss, and that's it, and dropped her off. Now, if he and his wife as either separated legally or divorced at that point, he wouldn't have had time to get that other house that he had next door to her, 2 doors down, to have co-parenting on the kids. And he was hardly ever home, so it's unlikely he had a child's bed there. Even if, he might have, but let's say this happened, the way she pictures this might have, you would have to have him have picked a time when Julie and the kids were going to be gone for a couple of days, reliably absent, and do this over at that place. Okay, so then how's he going to explain this cracked leg and or collapsed child's bed? You see, this guy can work his way around a studio and all these actors and manage everything, and he doesn't have his head together enough to figure out something simple like this. That don't make sense. It would make far more sense to have him have rented a hotel room, some ritzy place with a restaurant dining room downstairs, and then take her upstairs for this. and be able to bribe the manager if anything went wrong from his perspective. This did not happen. This is total unmitigated bullshit. The next question is why? Now, oh yeah, that's another thing. Between this alleged rape and the, I doubt he ever actually went beyond a kiss with her, between this alleged incident, and her writing about it, she's been to Vietnam where she entertained and sometimes screwed some troops. She might or might not have gotten involved with or met a certain expert in psychological warfare who was in play at the time. Michael Aquino of the Temple said, let's assume she might not, but the main thing is that after that she took an interest in Vietnam vets, and by the time she was writing this up or talking about it, she would have had all the information she needed to fabricate a PTSD story and how you can push something to the side of your mind and sort of forget about it even though it's horrific, and then suddenly something happens that triggers it and brings it forefront. She'd have all the information she needed to construct the original lie, except to make it believable. She forgot about the age of the kids, the size of the bed it would have to be, and to make it be, to explain why she took so long, to how it suddenly comes forward in her mind and becomes a major issue. So, in her dangerous blog, she says she's going to concentrate on the subject of the, quote, the evil Jack Webb, unquote, in her next book, which is, quote, Secrets of the Goddess, unquote. And it's speculated that she's doing this in order to get money, get attention, get more sales for her book. This could be. But I smell an agenda. You see, something happened. Something's been going on in my life for a long time because of my being irritating to some people a long time ago and more recently. And that something ramped up a little bit. And then all of a sudden, after, I'm not going to tell you what it is, okay? But all of a sudden, my posting was February 17th. And when I found out about this sudden increase in this issue, I called back to my source and I asked, this increase happened before or after the 17th of February? When did this happen? It was sometime in February. And I started putting two and two together even more than I had, and it's already suspicious it had to do with this. And I said, was this before or after the 17th? Well, it was after the 17th. 17th is when I posted that. When you're taking flak, you're over the target, so I'm over some kind of target. And whether it's something to do with protecting something about Mamie van Doren or discrediting Webb as perhaps being a good influence for objective reality and facts and things like that instead of this borderline trans state stuff that everybody seems to be running around in. And he said one episode he said in Dragnet that when he said LSD was the bomb, and you think heroin was the bomb, but I forget the sequence. It begins with marijuana and then something else, and then finally ends with LSD. But if you're going to talk about really warping, reframing the mind and affecting the public, and maybe even involving paranormal context, then LSD would definitely be more of a bomb than heroin would be. Now, I smell an agenda. I'm going to deal with that in the next video.